Again, thank you once again for joining us. I'd like to actually start with pretty much a 30-second overview of what we do. It's just a quick introduction because many people are not aware of Career Innovations and many do not know what we actually do. Well, I'm Bridget Baggett. I'm the founder of Career Innovations. We are an executive search firm. We were launched in 2007, so we're going on about 7 years strong. We are a referral-based firm, which we pride ourselves of innovative technology and tools to locate our best talent. A lot of the resources that we offer, which is, again, the job seeking training that you're actually utilizing now. We also do compensation benchmarking as well, referral and retention workshops, along with, again, our staffing and recruiting. Today's quote is, "Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant." And we're going to talk about a lot of planting seeds. You know, you may not see the return immediately, but it's definitely being planted and being grown. You know, you're actually starting to grow some type of result at the end of the day. So we are going to talk about that, and I do like that quote. Okay, the questions that we that were asked, there were 7 questions that were sent prior to our session that we're going to cover. Again, if you have any questions that you'd like to address following the session, just be sure to put them in. A question was submitted after the presentation was created, and I will address that following the workshop. The questions are, what is the best way to access professional contract services after in direct management role or after being in a direct management role for most of your career? Next one is, should I write less cover letters in the interest of getting more applications out? Next one is, I'm having a hard time getting callbacks after submitting my CL and resume and would like to try new techniques to gain employment. Our next question, which this is a previous person that heard me say that landing a job is 70% presentation. Do you have any tips or resources for women on confident interview body language? Next one is, do you have any advice for women on how to succeed wage negotiations? I'm going to talk about that. How can you go from working in a nonprofit sector to corporate? And I'm looking for tips on securing employment as well as advice in getting to the human resource with minimal experience. So we're going to talk about all these things today. First question, what is the best way to access professional contract services after indirect management role for most of your career? This question can be answered many ways depending on the context asked. This is what I received from the question. I said, are you asking how to transition into a contractor role after being employed as a full-time employee in direct management? This is actually how I answered the question. Forgive me if this is not what you meant, but there are, I know several individuals that are in full-time employment that would like to transition to contract, and I know contractors that would like full-time employment. It's really about, you know, the lifestyle that you want and if you're able to actually do contract work. The first thing you want to consider if you want to be a contractor, if you're going to be an independent contractor or you're going to be a business entity. And the reason why I say that, because it's really versus how the company is going to how the company is actually going to file you with their company. You know, a lot of people want to do 1099s as the independent contractor versus a W-2. I can tell you right now that most companies list their contractors or employees under a W-2 employees, but they're under a contract as a W-2 employee. Though there are other options out there, they can list them as a 1099. There's some organizations that do core to core. Many opt out for these options for various reasons. One is that, you know, these options are under heavy scrutiny from the IRS. You know, if you're a business using independent contractors, you know, you have to be ready for scrutiny from the IRS. The reason is there is an advantage. You know, I don't know if it was an advantage for you or the employer, but people that do classify their employees as 1099s or as straight out independent contractors, They aren't required to pay unemployment insurance. They don't have to pay workman's comp insurance or even payroll taxes. So even though they have them as a independent contractor, these laws are very strict to actually be classified as an independent contractor, but they're often ignored. So now the government is really cracking down on how companies are classifying their employees. I actually will advise that if you're going to be a true contractor, in many cases, if companies are employing quote unquote true contractors, they're actually employing them through either their own organization or through a third party firm. So it rules out the 1099, or if it does it rules that they can set up some type of entity in which they can house their income tax or file their taxes. So if you're trying to become a contractor, I would think the best way to go about doing is either create a company in which you can house your income for tax purposes. If not, you're going to find it very difficult, the companies that are going to be willing to do a 1099 with you. I can tell you that straight out, because many companies are really shying away from doing 1099s. This brings us to our next point, which is being a service provider. And I think being a service provider, regardless if you're trying to be a contractor or if you're looking for a full-time employee, you have to put on a consultant or a service provider hat. You're providing this organization, whether you're applying for full-time or part-time or contractor, you're providing them a service. So you're going to have to approach this as a service provider. What are the services that, what are your services going to be? What are the services that you're going to provide? How are you going to market yourself as a service provider, to the marketplace? How are you going to be viewed as a leader in your industries that organizations want to use and pay for? You're going to have to come up with different ways to make yourself marketable from everybody else that's providing that same service. And this goes for job seekers as well. If you're in a particular industry and you're applying for positions, you're going to have to differentiate yourself from everybody else that's applying to that particular position. Again, these are questions that you're going to have to put together in your plan. These are questions that everyone that's seeking employment should be asking themselves, whether they're looking to be a contractor or they're looking for full-time employment. Your next avenue can be staffing agencies. There's a lot of staffing agencies that staff contractors. That's their niche. They staff independent contractors. So your best bet will actually be, going through a staffing agency if you opt out from actually creating your own entity. There are various staffing agencies in different industries that have different niches. They're usually not usually, I would say they always put the employee on their particular payroll, which means they're including your health care, your dental, even your 401k. Keep in mind, these benefits are not included if you decide to offer your own services as a single entity or a independent contractor or 1099. You will have to purchase your own coverage independently, which can be very expensive. So regardless of what you're going to do, you're still going to have to prepare yourself for this journey. And that brings us to our last point, is actually having some type of plan in place. And you're going to have to prepare yourself financially, emotionally, in some cases physically for this journey. The cost of healthcare is going to be very high, if you're not only trying to cover yourself but a family, and you're actually trying to find this on your own and you don't have a company to sponsor you. Relocation, this is something that's real in this field. Are you willing to relocate if a contractor opportunity presents itself? Many agencies that do work with contractors, they work on a national level. Many do work local, but they also work nationally. So that opportunity that you may be looking for may not be in your backyard, may not be down the street. This may not be even a 25-mile radius from you. It may be in a totally different state. Are you willing to relocate? And one thing that contractors run into many a times is stability. Keep this in mind. If you're going to be a contractor and you're going to be contracted out on different projects or in different assignments, keep in mind that most contracts do have an end date. You know, many contractors I know are always in job seeker mode. You know, they're always trying or constantly trying to find ways to set up their next opportunity. You know, this can cause stress financially. This can cause stress emotionally, not only on you, but as well as on your family. You know, so stability also has to do with the niche that you're in. If you're in an industry or you in a particular position that you're in a hot craft that's, in demand, you may not have any troubles finding your next contract, but you also have to keep in mind, the demand changes. Something that may be in demand this year may not be in demand when your contract's up. So you also have to keep that in mind. That's one thing that I do see that contractors go through if they aren't open to, relocating, is finding themselves, their stability is at risk. And you also want to look at, your skill set and make sure that your skill set is in demand, regardless if you're looking for full-time employment or if you're looking for a contractor position. And hopefully that answers your question on becoming a contractor or making that transition from being an employee in a management role into being a contractor. Okay, let's move on to our next question. Next question is, should I write less cover letters in the interest of getting more applications out? Let's first look at what a cover letter is. And I said cover letter or not. Your cover letter, first of all, is an introduction. It should pretty much tell the person, why you're applying to this job. You should actually be stating somewhere in the cover letter the job or position that you're applying for. You have to remember that many of these organizations are getting a multitude of cover letters, and they want to make sure that the position that you're applying to is relevant to what's actually open. Also, your cover letter is a platform. A cover letter is a platform pretty much to sell your solution. Why are you the best fit? What accomplishments make you unique or competitive? And this is the way you should be using a cover letter. I'm seeing a lot of cover letters that ramble on about themselves, about, what their duties are at their company, and it really doesn't bring any value. And being honest with you, that's why a lot of employers don't even read cover letters, because most of the time it's not really bringing value to what the position they are trying to fill. So you want to make sure that if you are writing a cover letter, you're actually using it as a platform to get your skill set out. And the one way people also use cover letter is actually a sample of communication, sometimes a sample of writing. Bear in mind that the letters you write not only convey your interests and qualifications, but they also give the employer an opportunity to observe your attentiveness to detail, spelling, grammar, and the overall quality of your written communication. So sometimes people look at your cover letter as a way, how does this person communicate? How do they use words? Do they pay attention to detail? Are there misspelled words? Are they using the right, pronouns? So are the right conjunctions? They look at this also as a way of you communicate, how professionally you communicate, and they do that with emails as well. And if you're going to use a cover letter, it goes back to the platform, and it goes back to highlighting the qualifications that may be overlooked in your resume. I've seen a lot of people use a cover letter, and I actually use cover letters when I write them and showcase highlights or accomplishments in bullet point format. That way you're not lost in the sauce with all this verbal writing. I'm drawing out the accomplishments I want you to see, that you may overlook in my resume, or I'm highlighting the accomplishments that may not even be in my resume. You want to use your cover letter to do that. I think a cover letter should be tailored to each specific job in which you apply, but keep this in mind. If you're applying to positions in your industry and you're applying to this pretty much similar job types, you're not bouncing around applying to totally two different job titles, your abilities and your accomplishments shouldn't be changing that much. Your abilities and accomplishments should not be changing from one job posting to another. If you said that you did this and you brought value and you increased, market share, why would that change because you applied to a different job? So a cover letter that outlines your capabilities, your accomplishments, what you can bring to the organization should not change from application to application unless you're applying to jobs that are not within your field of expertise. And I can see if you're making a career change and you're having to take out transferable skills and you're trying to tailor your transferable skills to each and every job, I totally understand why you have to change that cover letter from job to job. But say for me in recruiting, whether I put my resume into a recruiting agency or I put my resume into a manufacturing company that's asking for a recruiter, my accomplishments as a recruiter and what I post as a highlight of my abilities are not going to change, because guess what? Most of the time the requirements are going to be the same as what they're requesting from a recruiter or from a person that's in a recruiting field. So you shouldn't be taking too much time to do that. Only thing that you should be changing is, the person or the company that is addressed to. If you do want to switch up your accomplishments, depending on what the company's asking, that's fine. But this shouldn't be a task that should be holding you back from getting more applications out. If it is, you're doing it wrong. Your cover letter is not as effective as it could be, or you're not really highlighting your capabilities to its fullest extent. So that's something that you want to look at if you find yourself having to manipulate your cover letter each time you submit to a job. Okay, next question, the breakthrough. I had someone that said, I'm having a hard time getting callbacks after submitting my CL, which is their cover letter and resume, and would like to try new techniques to gain employment. Okay, the first thing I have in there, or actually 4 things I had, are evaluate, consider startups and small companies, unplug, and look at different resources. First, I want to talk about evaluate. You should take a couple steps back and evaluate your current marketing plan. First of all, ask yourself, do you have a self-marketing plan? I can ask many people that, they're winging it right now. They're just applying to anything and everything that looks like, they can do. So you have to have some type of marketing plan in place. What are you currently doing? What can you be doing more of? You need to sit back and see, okay, what am I doing and what's not working? Are you solely relying on job boards? Are you following up with the employers or reaching out to internal recruiters within that organization? Even though if you can't get a hold of that decision makers, recruiters always love to talk to people, especially if this is going to benefit them in the bottom line. You also want to keep in mind that if you're applying to very large organizations, you also want to consider that sometimes it is a numbers game. In some cases it's who you know. And if you're applying to these huge organizations where they're getting an average of 500 to 600 resumes a week, you may be the best thing since sliced bread, but who would know if they don't see it? If you have 400 resumes before you. So you want to be able to put yourself out there as the person to know. And that's why I said sometimes it boils down to who you know. And you also want to know your value in the marketplace. Take a look at your resume. Take a look at your skill set. Are your skills dated? How do you measure up, or how do you compare to the competition that's out there that are applying to these exact same positions? That's why I said evaluate, because this is really something that you're going to have to take and evaluate and be honest with yourself. Sometimes it's not the organization. Sometimes the organization is hiring the best talent that's out there, and guess what? It may not be you. And that's something, that's a hard pill to swallow. But you really have to evaluate to see, where am I going wrong? Can my resume be done better? Am I targeting the right position, or am I using the right or the correct keywords so my resume is not being parsed out by this technology? You also have to take some accountability in this and figure out, let me evaluate this and also see what I can be doing more of and what's not working. Also, it goes back to considering startup and small companies. That's why I made that statement about, sometimes it can be a numbers game with these large organizations. Everyone wants to be a part of the Procter and Gambles and the Googles, and they want to have these great accolades on their resume. But you also consider that these larger organizations hiring process are very lengthy. Sometimes it's very lengthy to get interviews, let alone a start date. So you also want to consider, while you are applying to these huge companies, also consider smaller organizations where the decision makers are far more accessible. You really want to consider that. You also want to unplug. I've used this all the time when we talk about networking and putting yourself out there, and it goes back to your marketing plan. What should you be incorporating as other avenues of finding employment other than plucking away at your keyboard? Employers are increasingly relying on internal referrals to find new hires. You know why? It's cheaper. It's cheaper to get someone internally to refer someone and give them a little reward bonus or referral fee versus paying a firm like me thousands of dollars. And plus, in addition to that, is building a positive company culture and a positive work dynamic. They find that employees are happier when they're working with individuals that they respect and admire. Companies are now making room in their budget to actually incorporate reward and referral programs. Why? Because it increases their retention rates and their company loyalty. So a lot of companies are relying on people to, who do you know? So that really means that you're going to have to unplug and actually get out there and network with people so you can be one of the people that they can refer to someone in the hiring position to take a look at your resume if you're trying to get into some of these huge organizations. And also take a look at your local resources. Look at local resources in your area that assist job seekers like yourself. This may include networking events. This may even include nonprofits that partner up with organizations that are designed to help out displaced workers. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of organizations that help with displacement, and they partner up with these organizations if they're going through layoffs, and they provide services and placement options for the company. So there are other resources that may be local to you that you may reach out to that may help you with this breakthrough in finding employment. But it really goes back to these four things: evaluating your current situation, considering smaller companies as well as startups, getting out there, networking, and unplugging yourself from the internet, and checking out your local resources. Okay, your next one is, you say that landing a job is 70% presentation. Do you have any tips or resources for women on confident interview body language? And this is not only for women, this is for anyone that's actually trying to have an interview. And I put in here, body language does matter. The first one I'm going to touch on is eye contact. And some of these things that I say may be kind of, basic, or, I kind of know that, so I know to make eye contact. But a lot of people don't. And a lot of people do some of these things unconsciously and don't know that they're doing it. First thing is eye contact. If you're looking away or staring at an inanimate object, this can show lack of confidence and sometimes deception. We all know if you ask someone a question and they look away for a certain amount of time, many people can generalize that as, oh, they're thinking or they're lying. One of the two. I'm pretty sure if you ask a spouse or a child what they did and they look away, you can say, oh, they're about to come up with they're about to come up with something. So when you're not making eye contact, many people can look at that as, you're not confident in the skills, or you're not confident in what you're actually saying, or you're not being totally honest. So throughout the interview, you want to make eye contact with the, interviewer, and make sure that you're showing that you're somewhat interested in the position. Because if you're looking away and you're finding other things to look at, even if they don't think you're, being, you're being you're actually lying or being deceptive, or a lack of confidence, they may think that, oh, this person's not really interested. Because if I'm talking to someone and they're not looking at me, I'm thinking they're not even interested in what I'm saying. So that's one of the things that you need to look at. Next one is your posture. Crossing your arms, of course, everyone should know that shows, you show some type of defensiveness, or resistance. Pointing also can show aggression. Even leaning back. I know in some interviews they give you those chairs that can lean back and you can get all cozy. Some people can see that as being lazy or arrogant. If you lean back and you're talking, some people may think, oh, this person thinks they have, they got the job already. They're not even giving me their undivided attention or giving me the respect to actually sit up. So posture, many people say that the way a person sits or even walks can be an indicator to many employers of whether or not this person shows confidence, or if this person may be a problem down the road. Next one is excessive movement. Most excessive movement is done without, you even consciously knowing what you're doing and that you're doing it. And also excessive movement doesn't have to just go with just moving. Sometimes just nodding. This particular habit is common in females or in women, but excessive nodding or I know someone that I interviewed that, after each statement, when you come off as saying or saying yes, sometimes the interviewer can feel rushed, or sometimes it can come off as desperation on your part. Like, yeah, I know, yeah, like, hurry up, so a lot of times you don't want to use that. If you understand what they're saying, I will wait till they complete. You can nod once, you can smile, or you can just say, I agree with you, or I understand what you're saying. But at the end of the day, you want to find your still center and stay there. Another one is stop fidgeting. Fidgeting doesn't come in the form of just biting your nails. Fidgeting is a repeat action to release nervous energy. This can be anything. In men, this can be playing with your tie. You keep fixing your tie, or having someone just do something repeatedly. In one interview, I had someone that constantly kept taking off their wedding band. They kept just, taking it on and off their finger, not all the way off, but just slipping it up to the knuckle and back down, up to the knuckle and back. They just kept doing that over and over. And I know that you're nervous, but that nervous energy will not only distract me, but it will distract any interviewer. You want to be focused on the topic at hand. They don't want to be focused on your tie. They don't want to be focused on your wedding band. So you want them to be focused on the words that are coming out your mouth, not what you're doing in the interview. And sometimes not only can it come off as nervousness, this is also can come off as someone with a lack of confidence in doing the job that they may ask. So they may get nervous and, I'm not quite sure how to answer this, so let me fiddle with something. At the end of the day, what an interview is doing, they're trying to capture to see if you're able to efficiently articulate your accomplishments in an effective manner. At the end of the day, are you able to live up to your resume? A lot of people have great resumes on paper, but when you meet them in person, they're a complete mess. I've had a couple of those. They're great on paper, and when you call them in for an interview, you're like, this doesn't even match. So they're looking for consistency. So you want to make sure you can give that to them, and one way you can do that is, again, through body language. Next question was salary negotiations. This is a big one. The question at hand was pretty much being able to negotiate your salary. I don't think I put the question on this slide, but I'm going to go ahead and go through it. The first thing you need to know when you're into any type of salary negotiation is to research the value of your current position and pretty much know your value. Everyone knows when they're being lowballed. Everyone knows that, I'm not making what I'm supposed to make. What are you supposed to make? No, you need to find sources out there that compares you to the job market, what people in your position are making with the current skill set that you have. And a lot of people fail to remember that it's not only about the job position, because some people have the same job title, but they're bringing different things to the table. It breaks salary down not only by the position, but, your education, how much experience you have, how long you've been in the industry, any certifications. All that comes into play when developing a salary, not just your job. So you have to know your value, and you also want to know the market rate. A lot of people don't know what the position's offering on a demographic level. Like, where in your particular demographic, what are people usually making? What's the average person making in this particular position? So you want to be able to be prepared with this when you go into negotiations, so you know if the number that they give to you is fair. Next thing, you want to look beyond the base pay. A lot of people, when they negotiate salary, they're always worried about the take-home value, what I'm taking home. Salary or compensation doesn't just include what you take home. It also includes your benefits as far as health care, your PTO, your vacation time. All these things are negotiable, and people don't understand that. I actually had a client that I worked with, and I told this story before in a previous workshop, that they weren't able to match what the guy was already made. Well, they were able to match it. They weren't able to give them the extra perks. So they were able to still give him a boost in pay, but the guy that actually worked the position, his perks were that he had a car, he had a car allowance, he had a company car, he had all this stuff. And this was a smaller organization, and they said, hey, we don't have company cars here. We could give you the car allowance, and it just was, but they didn't have the room to, but we also give you an extra 10 grand too. They didn't have the room for that. So we got into negotiations, and I found out what was important to this guy, and family was very important. He was a newlywed, he just had a newborn, and I found out, what? If you can get more money, wouldn't you want to spend time, more time with your family? That'd be great. I got him an extra week in vacation. So we were able to negotiate. Hey, we weren't able to give this guy extra base pay, but he found that, I'd rather take that extra week in vacation over extra, 10 grand, which really equivalent, to less than $1,000 a month. And after taxes, it's probably, it's going to be less than that. So he valued actually having that time with his new wife and baby much more important than the extra, $600 a month, if that. So you have to figure out beyond the base pay what you can negotiate. Someone also talked about not disclosing a number first. When you're actually in salary negotiations, most recruiters may be hesitant to tell you how much the base pay is, or some jobs may be hesitant. I'm not. When I reach out to candidates, I tell them up front, we don't get heavy in discussion into compensation, because that can be a turn off as well, but I do put the number out there because I want to make sure I'm not wasting my time, and you want to make sure you're not wasting your time. So I pretty much cut all conversation that may lead to moving forward until I figure out, is this something that you want to pursue? Because you don't want to end up talking to someone that you have a position for 80 grand and they're making 120. More than likely, they're not going to take that drastic pay cut. So you want to make sure that your audience and the people that you're talking to are going to be on the same playing field and on the same actually have the same goals or the same outcome as you before you start pushing forward in the interview process. So not necessarily don't give them their number. I would try to figure out where they are, and usually recruiters, I know some, not all, will throw a number out there to give you some type of range, and see if that number falls within your range. And from there, consider what is their wiggle room, and what validates a higher base pay. It may be education, it may be experience. That's something that you're going to have to uncover. And I had questions about if you name a figure too early. A lot of times, people jump the gun. They throw out a figure out there before they have time to negotiate, and they find out the responsibilities definitely, exceed what they said they were going to be doing, and that's when this can come back to the table, and you can explain that you didn't realize the full responsibilities of the job. Now, since you have more information about the level of the position that it entails, that the sum that you gave earlier is no longer relevant. Then you can state the salary that you think would be appropriate for that position depending on the responsibilities. You can come across very educated, that you've done your homework, and also research the cost of living, the salaries that are in the position that carry that type of weight, and see if that's going to be something that's pretty much, again, the market rate. So there's different ways that you can approach this, but I also tell people, look beyond the base pay as well. There's definitely opportunities out there that you can negotiate beyond just the dollar figure. Next question is nonprofit to corporate. I had a question, excuse me. I had a question about making a transition to nonprofit to the corporate sector. This was pretty much straightforward. I didn't have any, I should say, any innovative, haven't thought of before ways to make that transition. To be honest with you, you will use the same transitions as anyone else, regardless if you're applying to a nonprofit or a corporate position. On this slide, there are things that may be challenges for someone that's leaving the nonprofit sector and actually going into the corporate industry. First thing, you want to be able to highlight your accomplishment and answer the why. Besides specific academic or experimental programs, nonprofit leaders are people that are committed pretty much to the mission of the organization. They see as a noble calling. Many of them have a particular mission or vision that they're pursuing or the company stands for, and you want to be aware and be very clear about your motives of leaving that particular vision or mission and actually entering the corporate America. You want to make sure that it's going to be received well, and take into consideration that many people may look at, your motives as more monetary than actually of, I want to do it because this is what I want to do, because the benefits of nonprofit and profit, of course, some of the pay is a little bit better as far as the corporate side of things. And I wouldn't say so much of the benefits, because I know some, especially government-funded nonprofits, some of them still issue pensions, which corporations, I can't even think of a company that still holds to a pension plan, which there's some out there, but 20, 30 years ago, every company pretty much had a pension, and now that's pretty much unheard of in the private sector, unfortunately. Also, I think a challenging thing that you will see is the nonprofit culture. Understanding the uniqueness of a nonprofit culture versus a corporation. When you're selling yourself or selling your solution as a professional, manager, even technical skills, make sure that you're showing the hiring managers that you understand the skill shift, as well as the culture in their organization. Is going to be particularly different for nonprofits and corporations. Nonprofits may have a more tight-knit company culture versus a corporation that has a lot of red tape and bureaucracy involved in that. So you want to be able to explain, how you can contribute to the company culture, and you want to also convey that you understand the difference in the change in culture in the nonprofit to the corporation. And you also remember that your professional, managerial, and technical skills may be under scrutiny. And the reason why I say that, because if you have I don't know what sector or what particular role you played in a nonprofit, but I can tell you that experience, particularly under finance, accounting, even IT, marketing, communications, they're different from corporations, because sometimes nonprofits, especially smaller ones or that have the grassroots of just, coming out, they don't have the advantage of taking advantage of some of the advanced technologies that's out there that these huge corporations use. We're talking about, not to say that they're oblivious to the technologies out there. Let's face it, some nonprofits just can't afford it. They can't fit some of these technologies in their budget, and they may see that your skill set may be dated to them, because they may be using certain things in their organization that you've never been exposed to on a professional level. So they may see your skill set as very dated and unable, they don't see any value to it. So you also want to be able to highlight what you're able to do and what value you can bring to your organization, because I've seen some skill set, again, especially technical skills, managerial skills, become under scrutiny because of this, that, they just haven't been exposed to some of the things. And I've seen job postings that say that they want a corporate experience. They're looking for someone that's been in a corporation or been in a corporate setting. So these are some things that are going to be working against you when you move out there. But as far as marketing yourself or transitioning, you wouldn't do anything different that a normal job seeker would do, that that are doing a core to core, that's moving from one corporation to another. You still need to market yourself. You still need to be able to showcase your skill set and sell your solution, regardless if you're moving from the nonprofit sector or moving from the corporate sector. You're still going to have to be able to do those things effectively. HR transition. I had someone that asked, I'm looking for tips on securing employment as well as advice in getting HR with minimal experience. I'm going to make this question quick. There's so many branches of HR. If you're on the line, you have your talent acquisition that does recruiting and staff development. You have your benefits and compensation, training development, legal, organizational development, and I'm pretty sure I left off a whole other slew of HR things that you can, or HR branches, I should say, that you can do in HR. All of them require a certain skill set. For me, I'm talent acquisition. Even though I'm in HR, there's no way I can do the legal part. I'm not an attorney. Most people that are in the legal part of HR or have their law degree, they fought cases in discrimination. They know the regulations. These laws are changing every quarter. Each time I turn around, there's a new law coming out. So even though I'm in HR, I haven't been exposed to a point where I can say I'm an expert in that industry. All I can say is I'm an expert in talent acquisition. The quickest one that you can get into, all of them are going to require you to take an entry-level position. I would say except the legal, because legal, they're not going to, unless you're coming with some type of legal background and you can actually be able to decipher some of this legal lingo and be able to interpret some of these laws. They're going to look for someone with a legal background. Even with benefits and compensation, you're going to have to know payroll. You're going to have to know the benefit compensation structure. How are people paid, far as tiers, unemployment, workers' compensation. These aren't things that you can just come in and just learn by osmosis. A lot of these people that are in these particular fields come with training, either through a degree or through some type of certification where they've been exposed to this. So I couldn't tell you just a simple position that, what can I just take at, with no experience or minimal experience. All these particular sectors are going to expect or have some type of criteria that you're going to have to meet before they consider hiring you. My advice to you, if you're trying to get in the HR sector, is to start getting involved in the HR events and networking things, and getting yourself exposed to HR either through an entry-level position or either through some type of trade or skill that you can obtain a certification and work towards that. This is something that you just can't get into overnight. They're not going to have someone with no experience be in charge of payroll or legal or any of these things that a lot of people that come in with experience or been exposed to, even through an internship. So I would definitely, my advice to you is definitely get in there, network it, with people in HR. Even if you're currently gainfully employed now, see if you can start taking courses that can prepare you for one of these avenues that you want to take. And then from there, reach out to companies that are looking for entry-level positions or internship level positions that you can shadow, and actually get that hands-on experience. So that would be my actual feedback to answer that question as far as transitioning to HR. And that actually rounds it up. The last question I had that I wasn't able to put on the slide was, I've been working overseas for some time. They recently moved back to the U.S., and you're looking to get strategies in gaining employment in your job search. I think that's awesome that you worked abroad and you have international experience. My advice to you is to sell it. A lot of companies are looking for people that, had that skill set and able to bring some of that knowledge over here and being able to be a value of their organization through international exposure. So if you are you worked international, I would use that definitely as a selling point. A lot of companies don't see that often. I can't tell you how many resumes I got where someone just, worked abroad and came back and was able to sell their skill set. So that's something that's very unique to you. The tips would pretty much stay the same as far as marketing yourself, but I definitely would, highlight that you worked abroad and showcase what you've done abroad and how that can be some value to the organizations that you're applying to here in the U.S. Okay, I'm going to open up the lines because I do want to answer any questions that people may have. And I do see some questions, some hands that are up. Have someone that asks, how does this work? Cool, thanks. So I guess you didn't have a question. You're asking how it actually works. Okay, an article on my LinkedIn feed this week says smart people use a one-page resume. Do you agree? Smart people use a one-page resume. I actually saw that. I don't know if I saw that particular one, but I saw one that saw that smart people, it's harder for smart people to get a job. I know I did read an article about that. One-page resumes. It really depends. I'm not against having 2 pages. I think that 2 pages is the limit. I think that would be unless you have a PhD or you have some type of professional degree that actually calls for more than 2 pages. And we're talking about, I've actually had people that had, they had patents, they had all type of things that definitely would go over 2 pages, but in most cases that's not the case. So 1 page, I think, is especially for entry level, anyone that had only 1 or 2 or 3 jobs, 1 page is good. But if you're more of a seasoned employee, I don't see anything wrong with 2 pages. Do I think that smart people use a 1-page resume? No, I've come across a lot of smart people that resume is longer than 1 page. Not to say that people that don't use it, if you can fit it in 1 page, more power to you. If you're able to, especially if you only had 1 job. I know people that have been on this job for 15, 20 years, I really don't need 2 pages because this is the only job I've had. Hey, you can fit it on 1 page. But I know people that had multiple jobs, or especially contractors that need more than 1 page to showcase their abilities. And nothing's wrong with having more than 1 page. I think in excess, when you go over 2 pages and you really don't have the need to, so I think that's when it becomes an issue. Do I have any more questions tonight? Well, I'm so happy that everyone joined me and I was able to answer any questions that you may have. We do have upcoming workshops in June and July. You can check out the website if you are interested in looking at some tailored workshops to a particular topic. At the end of this particular workshop, there is a survey. If you can log off and just take the survey, it's only 10 questions. It pretty much gives us an overview of how we did, what we can do better, and some topics that you'll like to see in the future that we cover in our Q&A sessions. So definitely take the survey and let me know basically how we did. Is this something that you enjoyed, and would you attend again, or would you refer it to others? And again, this will be uploaded on YouTube. You can take a look at that. And I'm going to just scan to see if there's any more questions that are out there. Okay, and I don't see any more questions, and we're actually right on time at 7:58. So if there are any questions in the future, definitely shoot me an email. My contact information is here, or you can book a time to speak with me one-on-one. Just go to the website and schedule an appointment, and I'd be more than happy to carve that time out to speak with you one-on-one. Other than that, everyone have a great night, and we'll do it again next Monday, 7 to 8. Have a good night. Bye-bye.